Sarah thought she knew her mother. Then a single text message shattered everything. One threat, one hidden past, and a biker club that would uncover secrets her mom spent 13 years burying. Some truths don't stay hidden forever, and some lies are meant to protect the people you love most. Sarah Dunn had mastered the art of waiting in cars. 13 years old, phone dead, homework forgotten at home. She sat in the passenger seat of her mom's Honda, watching bikers move in and out of the last chain garage like they were choreographed. Her mother had been inside for a few minutes, helping unload donated canned goods for the club's food program. Sarah didn't mind. The garage smelled like motor oil and coffee, and the people there treated her like she belonged. She reached for her mom's phone on the center console. Elise always left it unlocked when she was just running in somewhere. Sarah opened a game, then got bored, switched to photos, scrolled through pictures of herself at last week's school assembly. A blurry sunset, 3 identical shots of their cat. Then the screen buzzed. A text message. No name, just a number. Tell her the truth or I will. $5,000. 48 hours. Sarah's thumb hovered over the screen. Her chest tightened. She read it again. This wasn't spam. It wasn't a wrong number. Whoever sent this knew her mother, knew something about her, and they were threatening her. Sarah's hands went cold. She looked up toward the garage. Through the open bay door, she could see her mom laughing with Shelley, one of the club members who ran outreach programs for teenagers. Elise looked relaxed, normal, like everything was fine. But it wasn't. Sarah screenshot the message, then deleted the notification so her mom wouldn't know she'd seen it. She sat there, staring at the phone, her mind racing. What truth? What did her mother need to tell her? And why would someone threaten to expose it? When Elise finally returned to the car, she was smiling. Sorry, honey. Shelley wanted to talk about next month's donation drive. Sarah handed her the phone without a word. Elise glanced at the screen. Her smile vanished. The color drained from her face. She stared at the message for 5 full seconds, then locked the phone and set it in her lap. Mom, it's nothing. Her voice was too calm, too controlled. That's not nothing. Elise started the car. Her hands were shaking. It's probably just a scam, Sarah. People send these all the time. It mentioned me. Elise's jaw tightened. It didn't say your name. It said her. Who else would it be? Her mother didn't answer. She just drove. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, replaying every vague answer her mom had ever given. Why they never visited family. Why they moved 3 times before Sarah turned 6. Why her mother flinched whenever someone asked about Sarah's father. She'd built a story in her head. Dad walked out, end of discussion. Now that story had cracks in it. The next morning, Sarah waited until her mom left for work, then rode her bike to the last chain garage. Hurley was in the back, hunched over a laptop surrounded by cables and disassembled electronics. He looked up when she walked in, grease smudged across his forearm. Your mom's not here. I know. Sarah pulled out her phone and showed him the screenshot. I need your help. Hurley studied the message, then looked at her. Does she know you're showing me this? Not yet. He leaned back in his chair, considering. I can't dig into someone's phone without permission. Kid. That's a line. Then ask her. Hurley sighed, but he didn't say no. An hour later, Elise arrived at the garage. Her face was pale, her eyes red. She'd been crying. When she saw Sarah sitting next to Hurley, she stopped in the doorway. I'm sorry, Sarah said, but I need to know what's happening. Elise looked at Hurley. Can you trace it? I can try. She handed him the phone. Hurley's fingers moved across the keyboard like he was defusing a bomb. Careful, deliberate, professional. Sarah watched him pull up encrypted folders, dig through backup files, trace IP addresses she didn't understand. Then he stopped. Elise, how long has this been going on? Her mother didn't answer. Hurley turned the laptop around. On the screen, a string of messages from the same number, going back 14 months. Threats, demands, warnings, and beneath them, folders Sarah had never seen before. Scanned documents, legal filings, photos of people she didn't recognize. Hurley opened one file, Witness Protection Relocation Agreement. Sarah felt the room tilt. Mom! Her voice cracked. What is this? Elise closed her eyes. When she opened them, the lines around her mouth had deepened. She looked like someone who'd been running for years and just hit a wall. I'll tell you, she whispered. But not here. Hurley printed a single page from the files, a timeline with dates, locations, and redacted names. He handed it to Elise. Whoever this is, they know everything. Elise folded the paper and slipped it into her pocket. Then she looked at her daughter. We need to talk. The back office of the Last Chain garage smelled like stale coffee and old leather. Graham sat across from Elise, his arms folded on the scarred wooden desk. He didn't look angry. He looked patient, dangerous in a different way. Sarah stood near the door, refusing to sit. She wanted to be able to leave if this got too hard to hear. Start from the beginning, Graham said. Elise's hands were wrapped around a mug she hadn't touched. I was 22, living in Nevada. I got involved with people I shouldn't have trusted. What kind of people? Sarah's voice was sharper than she intended. Her mother flinched. The kind who made money by erasing other people's identities, selling them. We ran fraud schemes across state lines. Fake IDs, stolen social security numbers, shell companies for smuggling operations. Sarah felt sick. You stole from people? I moved money, set up safe houses, forged documents. Elise finally looked at her. I told myself I wasn't hurting anyone directly, but I was. I know that now. Graham leaned forward. Who ran the crew? Elise hesitated. The name seemed to stick in her throat. Seamus Brighton. People called him Torch. Graham's expression didn't change, but Sarah saw his fingers tighten on the edge of the desk. And his enforcer? Graham asked. Nick Shaw. The room went quiet. Graham sat back slowly. Torch Brighton tried to use our club 10 years ago. Wanted us to run packages across state lines, use our routes as cover. I told him no. He didn't like that. He paused. We made sure he understood the answer wasn't going to change. He moved on, Elise said quietly. Found other clubs. Kept expanding. Nick handled anyone who became a problem. Sarah's stomach turned. What does that mean? It means he made people disappear, Graham said bluntly. Not always permanently, but enough to send a message. Elise's voice dropped. The operation started falling apart when one of the crew got sloppy. The feds were closing in. I saw what was coming. She looked at Sarah. I was pregnant. I didn't want you growing up in that world. So I made a deal. You turned on them. Sarah's voice was flat. I gave the feds everything. Documents, locations, names. They promised me protection if I testified. Elise's hands trembled. Torch found out before they could arrest him. He disappeared. But Nick wasn't fast enough. They got him. He went to prison for 8 years. The room narrowed. Her mother's voice reached her like sound through glass. Present but unreachable. And me? Elise's eyes filled. You were born 3 months after I entered the program. They gave us new names. New city. New lives. Her voice cracked. I thought I was keeping you safe. By lying to me for 13 years? By giving you a chance to be normal. Sarah turned toward the door, her vision blurring. She couldn't breathe in this room anymore. Sarah, wait. But she was already gone. Graham's voice stopped Elise from following. Let her go. She needs time. Elise buried her face in her hands. Graham waited, then spoke again. Nick got out 6 months ago. Parole. I know. And Torch. No one's seen him since he ran. Elise looked up. But Nick worked for him for years. If anyone knows where Torch is, it's him. Graham stood and walked to the window overlooking the lot. This isn't just about money. Nick's not squeezing you for cash. Then what does he want? Revenge. And the fastest way to hurt you. Graham turned back to face her. Is through her. Elise's breath caught. He knows you've built your whole life around protecting Sarah, Graham continued. He knows the one thing you can't survive is her hating you. So he's making sure she finds out the worst way possible. I had to tell her eventually. Yeah, but not like this. Not with him controlling when and how. Graham crossed his arms. You said Torch disappeared. But you never said who he was to you. Elise closed her eyes. She'd known this question was coming. He was smart, charming when he wanted to be. He made me feel like I mattered. Her voice went hollow. And then I realized he didn't care about anyone. Not really. He only kept people around as long as they were useful. That's not what I asked. Elisa's hands clenched into fists. He's Sarah's father. The confession landed between them, heavy and irreversible. Graham didn't react. He just nodded slowly, like a piece of a puzzle had finally clicked into place. Does she know? No. She's going to find out. You realize that. I know. Elisa's voice broke. I just wanted her to know me first, to trust me, before she knew where she came from. Graham walked back to the desk and sat down. You can't protect her from the truth anymore, Elise. It's already coming for her. The only question is whether you're the one who tells her, or whether Nick does. Elise looked toward the door Sarah had walked through. She already knew the answer. Outside, Sarah sat on the curb near Shelley's bike, her arms wrapped around her knees. She wasn't crying. She was too angry for that. Shelley walked over and sat beside her without asking. She didn't say anything, just sat there waiting. Finally, Sarah spoke. My whole life is fake. No, Shelley said. Your whole life is yours. What happened before doesn't rewrite that. She lied to me. She kept you breathing. Shelley's voice stayed level. There's a difference. Sarah wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I don't even know who my father is. Shelley was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Do you want to? Sarah looked at her. Because if you do, Shelley continued, we'll help you find out. But you need to be ready for what you might learn. Sarah stared at the cracked pavement. I don't know if I am. Somewhere behind them, a wrench clanged against metal. Life kept moving, indifferent. Then take your time. But don't run from it forever. Sarah nodded. She didn't feel ready. But she knew Shelley was right. The truth was already here. And it wasn't going to wait. Sarah spent 3 nights on Shelley's couch. The first night blurred into the second. By the third, anger had burned through the shock, leaving something harder behind. Shelley made coffee each morning and left a notebook on the table. She never asked questions, just gave Sarah space to think. But on the 4th morning, Sarah opened the notebook and started writing. Questions, timelines, everything she remembered her mother ever saying about their past that now felt like a half-truth. When Shelley saw the list, she didn't tell Sarah to stop. She texted Louise. Louise arrived an hour later with a laptop bag and an expression that meant business. She'd been an investigative journalist for 15 years before she burned out and joined the club's outreach team. She knew how to find things people didn't want found. Your mom know you're doing this? Louise asked, setting up at Shelley's kitchen table. Sarah shook her head. Does it matter? Louise considered that. Depends on what you're ready to handle. I'm ready. Louise opened her laptop. Then let's start with the basics. What name were you born under? Sarah blinked. She hadn't thought about that. I don't know. Your birth certificate would have it. But if your mom entered witness protection while pregnant, they probably issued a new one under your current name. Louise pulled up a database. We need to find the original filing. What city were you born in? Carson City. That's what my birth certificate says. Louise typed quickly. But was that true, or part of the cover? Sarah felt the ground shift again. She didn't even know where she'd actually been born. Louise worked in silence for 20 minutes, cross-referencing hospital records, sealed court documents, and federal witness protection filings she accessed through old contacts who owed her favors. Sarah watched names and dates scroll across the screen, none of them familiar. Then Louise stopped. Got it. She turned the laptop around. This is your original birth record, Louise said quietly. You were born in Reno, Nevada. Your full name is Sarah Elise Brighton. Your mother is Elise Marie Vaughn, and your father is Seamus Michael Brighton. Sarah stared at the name. Brighton, the same last name as the man her mother had described. The man who'd run the crew. The man Graham had refused to work with. Her father. Vaughn was your mom's real last name, Louise said gently. She took Dunn when she entered the program. Sarah couldn't speak. She'd spent her whole life as Sarah Dunn. But she'd been born Sarah Brighton. She didn't know which one was real anymore. Louise printed the document and slid it across the table. There's more. Your father was involved in over a dozen federal cases. Fraud, identity theft, conspiracy to commit interstate smuggling. But he was never arrested. He disappeared 2 weeks before your mom testified. Where is he now? No one knows. The feds have been looking for 10 years. Louise pulled up another file. But Nick Shaw served 8 years and got out on parole 6 months ago. And 3 weeks after his release, your mom started getting messages. Sarah's hands curled into fists. So he waited until he got out. Then came after her. That's what it looks like. Shelley leaned against the counter, arms crossed. But why now? Why wait 6 months after getting out to start threatening her? Louise frowned. Good question. Back at the garage, Hurley had been tracking Nick's digital footprint. He'd found burner email accounts, VPN routes that bounced across 3 states, and GPS metadata from photos Nick had posted on a fake social media profile. When Sarah, Shelley, and Louise arrived, Hurley had everything mapped on a corkboard like a detective show. He's been careful, Hurley said, pointing to the timeline. But not perfect. He's been within 30 miles of this town at least 4 times in the past 2 months. Sarah stared at the map. He's been watching us. Watching your mom, Hurley corrected. But yeah. Shelley studied the message timeline Hurley had printed. Her eyes narrowed. Wait, look at this. She laid the messages out in order. The first one had been sent 8 months ago, right after Elise started volunteering at the club. The second came 2 weeks later. Then nothing for 3 months. Then the threats picked up again, escalating quickly over the past 6 weeks. What changed 6 weeks ago? Shelley asked. Sarah thought back. That's when my mom started talking to me more. About my dad. Not the truth, but... She stopped avoiding the topic completely. Louise leaned in. And the threats got worse. Every time your mom opened up even a little, Hurley added. The pressure increased. Shelley's expression shifted. He's not threatening her to stay quiet. He's threatening her because she's starting to tell you. Sarah's throat tightened. You think he wants me to know? I think he wants you to find out when it'll hurt most, Shelley said. When it'll rip you two apart. That's the real damage. Sarah sat down hard in one of the garage chairs. Everything clicked into place. The timing, the escalation. Nick wasn't after revenge on Elise directly. He was using Sarah as the weapon. So what do we do? Sarah asked. Louise closed her laptop. We stop letting him control the narrative. How? You already know the truth now. He can't use it against your mom anymore. Louise looked at Sarah directly. But you need to talk to her. Really talk. Because as long as there's distance between you two, he still has leverage. Sarah's chest tightened. She wasn't ready to forgive her mother. She didn't even know if she could. But she understood now that staying angry was exactly what Nick wanted. That night, Sarah came home. Elise was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at a cup of cold tea. When she saw Sarah in the doorway, she stood up so fast her chair almost fell over. I know who my father is, Sarah said. Elise went pale. I know what he did. I know why you ran. I know all of it. Sarah's voice cracked. And I'm still angry at you. But I'm not letting him win. Elise's eyes filled with tears. Sarah, we're ending this. Together. Sarah stepped forward. No more secrets. No more running. We're going to stop him. Elise reached for her daughter's hand. Sarah didn't pull away. Graham laid out the plan in the garage with the kind of calm precision that came from years of handling problems most people ran from. We're not going to hide, he said. We're going to draw him out. Elise sat beside Sarah, their chairs close enough that their shoulders touched. Neither moved away. Hurley pulled up one of Nick's burner email addresses on his screen. He's been using this one for the past 3 weeks. If we send a message from Elise's phone that looks like she's caving, he'll respond. What do we say? Sarah asked. Louise had already drafted it. She read from her phone. You win. I'll bring the money. But I meet you alone, and this ends. No more messages. No more threats. Elise's jaw tightened, but she nodded. He'll believe that. He thinks I'm desperate. Good, Graham said. Because desperate people make mistakes. and we're going to make sure he thinks you're making one. The message was sent at 9 p.m. Nick replied within 20 minutes. Tomorrow, 7 p.m. Old Rail Yard off Highway 52. Come alone or the deal's off. Hurley traced the reply. He's still using a VPN, but the response time suggests he's local. Probably within 10 miles. Then he's been close this whole time, Shelley said. Sarah felt her stomach twist. He'd been watching them. Waiting. The next evening, they arrived an hour early. Graham parked his truck a quarter-mile down the road, hidden behind an abandoned equipment shed. Louise and Hurley stayed with him, laptops open, recording everything. Shelley positioned herself on higher ground with a clear sightline. Elise and Sarah stood in the open gravel lot near the rail yard, waiting. At exactly 7 p.m., a dark sedan pulled in. Nick stepped out slowly, hands visible, a thin smile on his face. He was older than Sarah expected. Mid-40s, graying at the temples, with the kind of lean build that looked wiry and unpredictable. Elise, he said like they were old friends. It's been a long time. Not long enough, Elise replied. His eyes slid to Sarah. And this must be the daughter. He studied her for a moment too long. You look like him, you know? Same stubborn jaw. Sarah didn't flinch. You don't get to talk about him. Nick raised an eyebrow. Touchy. Guess she knows then. He turned back to Elise. You finally told her the truth? How'd that go? She knows enough, Elise said evenly. Does she know Torch is still out there? That he's been looking for you both. Nick's smile widened. Or did you skip that part? Sarah's heart pounded, but she kept her voice steady. You're lying. Am I? Nick tilted his head. Torch doesn't forget, and he doesn't forgive. You think I'm the threat? I'm just the warm-up. Then why are you here? Sarah stepped forward, ignoring her mother's hand on her arm. If he's so dangerous, why are you the one shaking her down for money? Nick's smile faltered, just slightly. Because you're not working for him anymore, Sarah continued. You're working for yourself, and you thought you could use me to break her. Nick's expression hardened. Careful, kid. No. Sarah's voice didn't waver. You don't get to tell my story. I already know who I am, and you don't get to use that against her anymore. For the first time, Nick looked uncertain. That's when Louise stepped out from behind Graham's truck, holding a folder. We've got everything, Louise said, walking toward them. Every message, every threat, GPS metadata from your phone, parole violations, contact with known associates. She stopped 10 feet away and opened the folder. Enough to send you back to prison and reopen federal charges. Nick's jaw clenched. You're bluffing. Hurley emerged next, holding a tablet. IP logs, VPN routes, burner account registrations tied to your real name through a credit card you used once at a gas station in February. He turned the screen toward Nick. You got sloppy. Nick looked from Hurley to Louise to Graham, who now stood at the edge of the lot, arms crossed, waiting. This was a setup, Nick said quietly. Yeah, Sarah replied. It was. That's when the sheriff's cruiser rolled into the lot, lights off but engine running. Sheriff Dalton stepped out, one hand resting casually on his belt. Nick Shaw. Dalton's voice was calm. I'm going to need you to put your hands on the hood of your vehicle. Nick went still. His eyes found Elise. Sarah watched him calculate run, fight, or fold. But he didn't. He laughed once, sharp and hollow, then raised his hands. You think this changes anything? He said as Dalton cuffed him. Torch is still out there, and when he finds out you've been playing games, he won't send someone like me. Maybe, Elise said, but that's not your problem anymore. Nick was loaded into the cruiser. Dalton exchanged a few words with Graham, then drove off. The lot went quiet. Elise turned to Sarah. Are you okay? Sarah nodded, though her hands were still shaking. Yeah, I think so. Shelley climbed down from her lookout spot and jogged over. That was gutsy. That was stupid, Louise corrected, but she was smiling. But it worked. Graham walked up and clapped Sarah on the shoulder. You did good, kid. Sarah looked at her mother. Elise's eyes were bloodshot, but dry. She looked like someone who'd just set down something impossibly heavy. We're not done, Elise said quietly. He's right. Torch is still out there. Maybe, Graham said. But you're not alone anymore. And neither is she. Sarah reached for her mother's hand. This time, when Elise took it, Sarah didn't let go. 3 weeks later, Sarah stood in the last chain garage, staring at a disassembled motorcycle engine spread across a workbench. Hurley wandered over, wiping his hands on a rag. You planning to rebuild that thing? Sarah smirked. No. First I'm gonna learn what it really is. Hurley laughed. Smart kid. Across the lot, Elise was talking with Shelley about the next outreach event. She looked lighter, different. Sarah turned back to the engine, picked up a wrench and got to work. She didn't know what came next, but the not knowing didn't scare her anymore. Sarah didn't go back to being the girl she was before. That girl was built on fear and half-truths. Now she helps Hurley with database security, and she's writing her own story under her real name. What would you do if everything you knew about yourself turned out to be a lie? Comment below. And if this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to embrace the journey for more stories that dig deep. See you in our next video.